morning, ladies and gentlemen. Dear Nicola, thank you very much for the kind invitation to be the moderator of this panel. I'm honored. And I'm also honored to be among two very distinguished personalities of world shipping. Two people that they don't only have the official positions today, but also they have been engaged for far too many years with European politics, European thinking in general, and about shipping in particular. So Mr. Plakiotakis, the Honorable Minister of Marine for the Hellenic Republic, and Mr. Vassilios Demetriades, the Honorable Deputy Minister of Marine for the Republic of Cyprus, are here to tell us what is really happening behind the scenes. We read the press, we read the announcements, but I think the objective today should be to better understand what is happening in shipping behind the various readings and announcements. We will try to think out of the box today, and I have written some questions mostly about the European Union maritime policy. It will be nice to keep them here for the rest of the day and get the most out of it, but my friend Nicholas didn't allow that, so we'll try to limit that to the scheduled time. So in this thinking, I have written some very specific questions in order to save time. One of them is, the EU has taken a very firm line as far as toxic emissions generated by shipping are concerned. And the question is this approach part of the shipping policy or part of its environmental policy? Mr. Plakiotakis.
Well, thank you, Mr. Platsidakis. First of all, I would like to thank you, Mr. Platsidakis. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me and having the opportunity to be amongst the, I would say, the leaders of the shipping industry, where actually I have the opportunity to exchange views on the critical challenges that shipping faces today. Well, let me clear out that in terms of the European Union has an established vision on carbon neutral, not only in shipping but in all economic sectors by 2050. Greece is of course aligned to this objective, and also it is included in our internal climate law. But the real question is that I don't think we should focus on either environmental or shipping policies. The true question, the core question actually, is that the measures that have been applied according to the policies that are being made by the European Union is that they have to be aligned, of course, with certain objectives, and they have to take into account, first of all, the competitive of the European industry, and also they must be aligned with the environmental, mainly, considerations. So in this respect, I feel that Greece is totally committed to reach these certain goals that have been applied also in terms of IMO. But I feel that mostly, and answering your question particularly, I feel that we have to take into account, mainly European Union is taking into account the environmental considerations.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Mr. Demetriades.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the organizers for the invitation. It's a great pleasure to be here among such esteemed shipping personalities. I think we are facing a number of crises that inevitably impacting shipping, a number of challenges that inevitably transforming shipping. But to come to your question, we should not forget that what we've been facing now, especially in the European Union, it's not a matter whether it derives from transport or environmental policies, but from the entire EU, We should not forget that EU leaders mandated the technocrats in Brussels back in December 2020 to come up with a policy to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 50% in 2013 and to reach a carbon neutral EU economy by 2050. So shipping should inevitably has its contribution to climate change, and that's why we are now in the process of formulating the Fit for 55, and part of it, of course, is shipping. We are, as Ioannis already mentioned, we are committed to deliver, and of course, the same applies for IMO. For us, the most important issue is to signal that shipping is an industry of international character. Climate change is a problem facing no borders, so inevitably, somehow, we should reach a global solution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So in other words, what is happening with shipping is mostly influenced by the overall environmental policy of the European Union. But then it comes to the second question. Do you believe that the European Union has a clear-cut policy in relation to ocean-going shipping, and a policy with deep understanding of what is happening in that part of shipping and how it functions? Mr. Plakiotakis.
Well, it is the case that decisions within the European Union are more politically driven, lacking a robust impact assessment on the consequences regarding the ocean-going shipping. To my knowledge and to my experience, we must increase the public awareness regarding the importance of particularly ocean-going shipping, and it's no exaggeration to state that Greek shipping is an essential factor for the world economy to keep moving. Greek shipping industry controls more than 20% of the global deadweight tonnage, and it is particularly important in terms of European Union, in terms of the global economy, in order to secure energy and food security needs worldwide. But I feel that, as I've already mentioned, we need to increase the importance of shipping, because shipping, after all, is not visible. Shipping is operating worldwide, and particularly for shipping nations such as Greece and Cyprus, we must safeguard the competitiveness of the industry in order to avoid, let's say, damage and wrong distinctions in terms of the European Union. But after all, there is not much, I would say, knowledge within the European Union in terms of the importance of the ocean-going shipping.
Very good, thank you. Mr. Demetriades?
Well, I think the answer to your question lies on two words: communication and extrovertness. We in Cyprus, Greece, we are part of the decision-making in Europe, and of course, sometimes we are approached with a number of legislative proposals that are not fit for purpose. They do not reflect the realities, the specificities of the sector. And it's also our responsibility, and when I say our, not only the regulators, but the entire shipping community, to better communicate the importance of the shipping sector globally, for the European Commission and also the European Parliament to better understand that shipping is a strategic asset for Europe. And of course, we need to become more extroverted. This is also an important pillar of our strategies, Cyprus shipping strategy, that the sector is very introverted in its approaches. We need to reach out to the NGOs, to all those influencing the green agenda in Europe, in order to better understand what is the value of this sector and how it contributes to the European economy to preserve it.
Thank you. I think all of us being in shipping admit and accept that the public image of shipping and the public awareness about the role of shipping is not as good, and certainly needs improvement. But then it comes to the question, and what about the regulators? Because they come up with decisions making, and we should expect them to come to know what it is about. So it's 2 coins, 1 coin, 2 sides. So do you think, and I think it's a crucial question, do you think that the European Union has a very clear maritime policy with a vision and an implementation plan? Mr. Plakiotakis.
Well, I think that the real answer is no. But we, as the largest shipping nations, both Greece, Cyprus, and Malta, of course, we control more than 70% of the European shipping. Greece alone has more than 58% of the European fleet. I think we have the responsibility to establish European decisions that are to the benefit of the European shipping in order to avoid competitive distortion and allocation, this is very important, allocation of shipping activity outside European Union. This is the case with European shipbuilding sector, where actually the Europeans didn't manage to cope with this issue. So these days, shipbuilding is outside Europe. It's in Japan, Korea, China. So we cannot afford to lose European shipping. We cannot afford to lose Greek shipping. We cannot afford to lose Cyprus shipping or Maltese shipping. So after all, I think we need to formulate, we need to establish European decisions that are to the benefit of the European industry.
Thank you. Actually, it is said by among the shipping people that the best friends of Korean, Chinese, and Japanese shipbuilding are the European Union regulators. Mr. Demetriades.
Well, when it comes to European shipping, I must say the main difference between EU and IMO is that EU regulates on the entire supply chain, whereas IMO is focused on ships. And what we have actually, we are representing here, which is the core of shipping. So it's more complex for the EU to come up with a solid policy that is fit for purpose. And that's why we feel also responsible to better communicate the interest, the importance of shipping, especially to the European Commission, to make sure that their policy is not is fit for purpose, and of course it does not only reflect the short-term approaches to meet some challenges, but it's a long-term vision to preserve the competitiveness of the shipping sector. We need definitely to better communicate our interest, and of course to influence the decision making in Europe by building also some alliances within like-minded shipping nations, because I can agree with Ioannis about the Greece, Cyprus, and Malta, but I do believe that we have a lot of points and interests in common with other like-minded shipping nations. So it's all about getting more organized and communicating that together with the industry, of course, because nowadays it's more important than ever that regulators and industry should go hand in hand.
I think both of you have admitted what we all suspected, that the European Union does not have a clear-cut maritime policy. But then it comes to the question, should you, the two of you plus Malta, try to lead an initiative about the formulation of a very clear, with very good understanding of of ocean-going shipping. Because it is said that when you talk to the Europeans about shipping, most of them think that it is this coastal passenger and river shipping, which is totally unrelated to what we're talking about today. So the question is, would you, as Greece and Cyprus and Malta, sit down together and try to formulate and lead the way? Plakiotakis.
It's not only a matter of Greece, Cyprus, or Malta. The European Union must realize that shipping is responsible for more than 90% of the export trade, especially during this difficult period of the pandemic, of the recent energy crisis because of the Russian invasion in Ukraine. We've managed to keep the supply chains open. Nowadays, I'm proud to announce that more than 50 ships are engaged in the operation of the Black Sea Grain Initiative in order to secure the food and energy stability in the whole world. So it's not a matter of, let's say, explaining in terms of and presenting the Greek Cypriot or Maltese prospect, but most of all, I think the European Union must realize the high importance of the ocean-going shipping. Without shipping, there's no trade. I mean, as simple as that. So everybody should realize not only the importance of the shipping industry, but also the importance of the seafarers, which is, to my point of view, of absolute importance.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Demetriades.
Well, certainly we have a role to play, but we cannot influence the decision-making just the three countries. I think it needs a consistent approach, not only to have strong messages towards the regulators there, but also to bring together the industry, because talking now also from my experience in Brussels, I've spent 12 years there, whenever a regulator receives an industry that is so fragmented, then it's music to the ears of the regulator, because at the end of the day, if we are receiving the industry with different interests, then we can just draw our line and proceed with what we have in mind. So it's important, and this is a message also from the industry that will help us to have a more solid message, that the industry not to be that fragmented. I mean, if you discuss the North and South, they have a completely different approach when it comes to shipping. And of course, each shipping organization in different countries is knocking the door of the Commission, signaling different messages. So I think what is very important is to have a solid, united industry towards the messages that will make also our role as important shipping nations more important, so we can make the message much more stronger towards the regulators, towards the European Parliament, and towards the Commission.
Thank you. I would like to share some thoughts of mine with you. I mean, we're a great industry. We offer so much to the standards of living of the world societies. We transport 90–95% of the world trade. We are by far the most competitive industry in the world. What we read about in economic books at universities is applicable to ocean-going shipping. There's no substitute of shipping. There's no time limit of how far shipping will live. And nevertheless, we are following the regulators. I think we should find a way and lead the way. We all remember that a very young girl from Sweden, I think, and she came up with this green aspirations, and she became a public figure within a few months. She was admitted by Obama, I think, at the United Nations, got awards. The news was first item in the news was about this lady. So for goodness sake, I think world shipping should try to find its position of what is happening. Sorry about this, but I'm very emotional with this stuff. Because you said about the European Union decision-making, it has been imposed by the European Commission that all members should have a unified opinion at IMO. No objections, in other words. Is this still the case? And if yes, how does it work? Does it work for the benefit of shipping or for the benefit of the Commission? Plakiotakis.
To add to the previous question, I think it's not only a matter of governments, it's only a matter of stakeholders in and outside of the industry. Because in order to tackle not only the challenges that shipping will face in the future, but also we need a strong voice in the decision-making process from the institutions, from the, for example, from the unions of ship owners, from the stakeholders, from the shipyards, from the oil refineries, from the engine manufacturers. So it's a matter of coordination of these ideas. But with respect to your question, I've already answered. I think this is still the state, but we need to formulate European decisions. We need to establish European decision that is to the benefit of the European industry in order to avoid distortions and allocation of shipping activities outside the European Union. So Greece, Cyprus and Malta, we do have the leading role. We need to educate, we need to communicate our knowledge, our deep knowledge, because we do have deep knowledge on particularly on ocean-going shipping, on the challenges that shipping will face in the future, digitalization, cybersecurity issues, decarbonization, the shortage of human capital. These are the challenges that global shipping will face in the near future. But particularly within the European Union, I feel that we, as the leading maritime nation, should establish decisions that are in the favor of our industry.
Thank you, Mr. Plakiotakis. Mr. Demetriades.
Well, your question it's about the competency issue. Of course, in the European Union, when there is a European framework in place, of course, we are bound to follow the European position, to promote the European position and not to deviate in IMO. But what is extremely important is not to appear in a global forum. I mean, especially for shipping, that we are aiming for global solutions, just to demonstrate our higher level of ambition vis-a-vis other regions. It's all about how we bridge the gap. It's all about how we are promoting our position and to reach a global solution. So on that, when it comes to IMO, we should use our network wisely. We should demonstrate that we are ready to listen to less developed countries, to countries with lower ambition, in order to see if they need capacity building, if they need any other sort of support in order to bridge the gap. Because regularly, not only in Europe, appearing there with statements showing how ambitious we are, we don't get into anywhere. I mean, we have to show that we are ready to be constructive and we are ready for a compromise. That's why it's not an issue only of having one single voice, but how we could use this position wisely to bridge the gap with countries or regions that they lack of ambition, and of course to be ready for compromises. And I think Greece, Cyprus, they have a role to play there because they are well-respected nations in the IMO framework.
Thank you. As you may know, today, if I'm not mistaken, we celebrate the World Maritime Day. I haven't read the newspapers today, but certainly the headlines will not be talking about it. And just to challenge the European Parliament. I don't think anybody at the European Parliament today is aware of that. So certainly something is missing. It won't be bad actually to have to try to have one session at the European Parliament about ocean-going shipping, because we all talk among ourselves about the benefits that we offer to the world as shipping. But the point is to make it public to the ones who make the decisions. So, you know, the European Parliament, I would say that possibly less than 10% are aware of what is happening. Anyway, recently there was one more study from the European Union about seamen, availability, nationalities, etc. Do you think it is time for the EU to go to action and come up with a very comprehensive approach of how EU citizens should be encouraged to be employed on board EU-flagged vessels? Thank you.
Well, the shortage of qualified officers will be one of the, to my point of view, is the biggest challenge that shipping will face in the future. The International Chamber of Shipping estimates that there will be a shortage of more than 90,000 officers by 2026. So no matter what level the automation reaches in the shipping industry, still we need qualified and quality officers to cope with the new challenges of decarbonization, digitalizations. So in a way, if we increase the public awareness of shipping, if we explain the important role of shipping in the world economy, I feel that we can attract young people to the industry, because after all it's a well-paid career, a socially rewarding career. And in that respect, we as the Ministry of Maritime Affairs and Insular Policy, we are going to propose a comprehensive approach on how to upgrade our maritime education. Still, we have evaluated that in Greece, over the coming years, we need about 3,000 officers, qualified officers, for the next 20 years in order to cope with the expectations of the growing of the Greek shipping industry. Last year only, the Greek shipping industry, there was an increase of more than 7%. 7% increase only during the last year. So after all, we need qualified officers. We need to upgrade our public maritime education system. Of course, we are going to open the private sector in terms of the maritime education. But still, we need to convince young people. It's not easy. It's not an easy job. Working conditions, of course, are in a very high standard these days within the ships. But still, stands the case on how to attract young people to the shipping industry, because we do not only need qualified officers in the ships. We need qualified personnel outside. So this is the case.
Qualified and committed because of the peculiarities of going to the sea. Mr. Demetriades.
Well, shortage is indeed a major problem for shipping, and I think we should approach it in a more holistic way. First of all, to improve the conditions, working conditions, living conditions on board, the standards of training. We should make an evaluation whether what we have in place is adequate. And then, of course, to tackle problems like the criminalization of seafarers. I mean, if you face all these incidents that captains and members of crews are accused on issues that they don't have any responsibility at all. This is not helping, irrespective of the campaigns we are making. Coming now to the campaigns, okay, we need to do a number of things to make the industry more visible to the younger generation. In Cyprus, we just presented 2 campaigns. One is targets women in shipping. We have introduced a new shipping term, which is woman shipping. It's something that I already wrote to Kidaglim to introduce it in the maritime terminology, because in English it's not that rich as the Greek language. We don't say, we say epandrosi or stelechosi. In English, we just say manning. So, showing our acknowledgement and appreciation to women in shipping, is good to use the term woman. The second, approaching the young people, we came up with a new campaign under the name Let's Disco, where disco for us is dive into shipping career opportunities. It's an interactive program to make young people to know more about the sector, because we don't want to force people to follow this profession. It's all about becoming more familiar with the sector, to like it, and to feel like it's worth going there, not just to end up having more people in the academies, and at the end of the day, they don't stay on board. So it's more important to create a culture for the seafaring profession, and of course, to signal that experience on board will really help them for a bright career, also ashore at a later stage.
Thank you. I think we should focus on the students at schools at the age of 15, 16 years old, because they are at the time to make a decision of their future. Certainly have met many shipping decision makers from the US and the EU. Whom do you consider to be the more pragmatic, realistic and down to earth? Thank you.
Well, both the US and the European Union are very influential players, and each has its own priority. But to be honest, during the recent energy crisis, and of course during the pandemic, both they were pragmatic. We've managed to keep the supply chain flowing, which was very important, despite of course all the health restrictions and the security challenges in the Black Sea. And I would like also, I'm very proud to say that more than 50 ships that are serving the Black Sea Initiative, the Black Sea Grain Initiative, are Greek-owned. But also it is important that both they consult and take seriously into account the views of maritime countries. Also, with respect to the sanctions regime, I feel that the sanction must be as aligned as possible at the global level in order to avoid distortions, because otherwise regulatory fragmentation creates gaps that will be urgently filled by operators from other jurisdictions. And finally, because the question still would turn to the Russian oil price cap, the design of the scheme and also its particular implementation must take into account the particularity of shipping, of how shipping operates. So I feel that both the US and the European Union should, in any case, consult the maritime nation that have great expertise on all subjects. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Plakiotakis. Mr. Demetriades, please.
Well, it's not a matter of making a distinction who is more pragmatic. Nowadays, to strike a balance between pragmatism and being ambitious is not that easy. But I think the recent crisis that we've been facing, either being the COVID pandemic or the Russian invasion to Ukraine, I think made shipping more visible, because more influential actors from the EU, but also from the States, realize the importance of shipping, and they are ready every time to present a proposal to take into account the specificities of the sector, because they understand that without shipping, the flows of oil or the grain or whatever important commodities will not be possible. So that's why we're in a consistent discussions and even battles sometimes from in the EU to make shipping visible, preserving the level playing field, because we should have a set of sanctions in place that they're not going to have any loopholes to make sure that these are effective and uniformly applied, and not to face incidents such as having ship owners flagging out from EU registries and continue to trade with Russia. So it is very important to have sanctions that could be uniformly applied, effective, and to preserve the level playing field in order to maintain the competitiveness of EU shipping.
Well, you see, the question just raised had a hidden objective, trying to find out if there is somebody more reliable than the other. Is it the US or the EU? Yesterday afternoon I was reading something, I don't know if it's accurate actually, that the ship owners should be part of this price cap of crude oil. So in other words, the ship should know how much the cargo owner paid for the cargo. And if the cargo has been sold several times while being on board, as you know, how on earth could the ship owner know about it? So if this is not piranha, then what is it? And talking about the sensitivity of the various nations during the COVID crisis, it is said, and I think it's a fact, that a Greek-owned ship was carrying a dead seaman for 7 months because none of the ports was willing to take him out. So how much respect they have for the industry is to be questioned. Do you believe there are very many ideas about how to restrict the emissions generated from the shipping industry? Do you think that which one will serve best the shipping community, the ETS proposed by the European Union or a levy system? Thank you, Mr. Plakiotakis.
Well, Greece over the past 10 years has been advocating a market-based measures that is a predictable and stable carbon price. And I'm really happy to note that this idea, at least at the level of IMO, it gains more and more support these days. After all, we believe that the revenues gained by this market-based measure will speed up the decarbonization process. They should be invested in the R&D in order to cope with the biggest challenge that the shipping will face in the future, which, apart from the decarbonization, is to secure the availability of the safe, new, alternative fuel of zero or low carbon, and of course it's the related infrastructure, because these days we don't know neither the technology, neither the alternative fuel. So a market-based measures, a predictable and stable carbon price can be a solution that will be applied in the global shipping. Of course, in terms of the EU ETS, we have expressed our objectives. Is now EU finalizing the the relevant regulation, but we are trying to introduce, even though that this regulation is finalizing, we're trying to safeguard the ETS cost that will target the right actors, which in our case is according to the fundamental principle that the polluter pays. And finally, as soon as, for example, a market-based measure is adopted by IMO, we must, in any case, avoid the double charging. So this is a good case of realistic policies that we are advocating.
Thank you. Mr. Demetriades, please.
Well, ETS versus levy. I mean, it will come to no surprise that Cyprus in the past submitted jointly with Denmark and some other countries our preference for a levy. But I mean, now we are just about to formulate an emissions trading scheme in Europe, as Ioannis already mentioned, and I think it was a major success of Greece and Cyprus to convince the EU regulators for the first time to acknowledge the role also of the commercial operators and the polluters pays principle. It's for the first time reflected in that regulatory framework. And of course, when it comes to the decarbonization path, we need a basket of measures, technical, market-based. So we should be open at IMO to reach a solution that is global and effective. And when it comes to Europe, we have clearly stated that it's very important to have a sunset clause within the Fit for 55. Once IMO reaches a global solution to repeal what we are, what we are going to formulate and apply in Europe. So we are not asking just a review clause, but a sunset clause. So this is very important, showing to the rest of the world that Europe is ready and is determined for a global measure and not just a review clause that might take 2-3 years after the adoption of a global measure.
Thank you, very clear. As my friend Nicholas may not invite me in the future to this panel, I want to share with you my personal thought that I think it's a failure of the shipping community that we didn't raise the levy early on, and simply now we follow the EU ETS and we complain about it. Gentlemen, as you may not be aware, there's a clock down here, and it has turned red. It tells me that we are overdue. Honorable panelists, thank you very much for being with us.